All right, we good, Brian? Okay. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Oh my gosh. Everyone's like, no, it's only 10. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our March Trauma-Informed Workshop. This month, our topic is on victims' rights and resources. Our guest speaker for today is Miriam El-menshawi. She is the director and principal attorney at McGeorge School of Law, Victims of Crime Resource Center here in Sacramento. But the program isn't just limited to Sacramento, so she's going to be talking about how they serve victims across the state, different programs that touch providers and victims across the state. Miriam has dedicated her career to helping victims of crime, to helping them understand their rights and assist them in navigating the criminal justice system. She serves on the U.S. Attorney Hate Crime Task Force, the Sacramento County Human Trafficking Coalition, and the Sacramento Unified School District Bullying Advisory Committee. So we're really excited to have her here. She did a great job on Monday. I know she's going to do a great job today too. So Miriam, come on up and share your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to speak to CalVCP staff. As Mika said, my name is Miriam El-menshawi, and I'm the director of the Victims of Crime Resource Center at McGeorge School of Law. I'm going to just quickly go over what I'm going to touch on during the presentation so you guys kind of have a roadmap of the hour. So I'm going to start talking about the Victims of Crime Resource Center, who we are, what we do, and then I'm going to switch gears and talk about victims' rights, particularly Marssys Law, and then I'm going to end off just touching quickly on a few other statewide organizations that provide services to victims of crime. So the Victims of Crime Resource Center was established in 1984, and it was really at the height of the crime victims' rights movement. It was during a time when legislatures were passing laws to make sure that victims were involved in the criminal justice process. It was during a time when victims were very much spectators in the process. They felt isolated, and they did not feel like they had a voice in the system. And this is the system that's supposed to bring them justice. So it was very frustrating, and they really felt re-victimized a lot of times. And that's why we were established. We were established to provide them with a one-stop shop to get information about their rights and also resources depending on the county that they live in. The center is mandated by penal code, and we are funded by the California Office of Emergency Services. So what kind of things do we educate victims on? We talk to them about compensation, because that's something that a lot of them are interested in. We let them know about the right to restitution and how to go by collecting restitution. And we also talk to them about the rights when their case is going through the criminal justice process. And we also let them know that they do have an alternative to the criminal justice process in the civil world. So if they do decide to file a civil suit, we let them know what their options are, etc. And like I said, we also provide those referrals to county-specific and crime-specific resources that can assist them. So how does the community reach us? We operate the 1-800-VICTIMS line, which is a toll-free line that anybody can call to get information that I've discussed. We operate Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. through 5 p.m. And we're also able to assist callers in all languages through a translation line. All calls and all information provided is confidential. Callers are able to provide as much or as little information as they feel comfortable giving us. Just as much as they would like to provide in order for us to provide the information or referrals that they need. A lot of times they call and they say, I need help with medical expenses. Who can I call? And that's all they want to give us. They don't want to tell us the crime type or anything else, and we're able to direct them to CalVCP. And you guys can pick up the services from there. We also operate a website, 1-800-victims.org, and we have a live chat function on that website. What we have found over time is that a lot of victims are moving away from the phone line and going to the website. They feel more comfortable with the anonymity that provides. So that's something that has been very successful over time. And once again, anybody can contact us through that chat line, and it's absolutely confidential. On our website, we also have the resource directory, and I'm going to go over a few snapshots of our homepage and our resource directory to let you guys know and get familiar with our resource database and what kind of information you can find on there. We also have all our informational brochures on the website, and those are free to download, or you can order a print version of those materials. Victims in the community can reach us through email, social media. We've seen a lot of youth contacting us through social media and getting information from those sources versus a traditional website. So we've really tried to reach out to younger folks using social media. We've started a LinkedIn account to reach a lot of service providers such as yourselves. So that's another way we reach the community and service providers. We also have a quarterly newsletter that law clerks work on articles on varying topics. So everything from specific crime victims' rights to specific legislation or pending legislation relating to victims. And we usually try to incorporate at least one Spanish article in our newsletter so we can make sure to be accommodating the Spanish-speaking community in California. We also provide free Know Your Rights presentations to community groups, service providers, and any group that's interested in information about victims' rights. These presentations vary in topics, so we do presentations on identity theft, we do presentations on cyberbullying, but the main goal is that people know that there are victim services here in California and that they can get that information through the 1-800-VICTIMS line. And that's the main goal. And the presentations have been very successful, and they've really helped us reach a wider audience. We can also be reached by snail mail and fax, but we've seen those numbers really decline over the years. VCRC staff is comprised of law school students. I have a staff of 5 students at the time, and they're all part-time because they're going to law school while working at the center. I also have a couple of recent law school graduates that are recently barred that are there. And I have volunteers that come from McGeorge and also outside of McGeorge School of Law. And this is our website here. That's the disclaimer. So as soon as you click that, this is what you'll get. We've changed it to be more accommodating and make things a little bit more obvious. So if you want to chat, you could just click here or click here. We've also made our resource directory a little bit more central in our page. And we've added a zip code locator for county, because what we found is that a lot of victims aren't aware of the county that they live in. So they call and, we're like, what county do you live in? And they say Rancho Cordova. And they don't realize that it's in the greater Sacramento County. So that's something that we've done to accommodate website users and also service providers who may be assisting somebody in a different city. We also have a space on our website for service provider help, and that's where you can go to get information about presentations and also about our free legal research, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So once you input the county or the zip code, this is what you'll get. And this is a snapshot of Sacramento County's page. We have our resources broken down by categories. So for instance, hate crime. If you are assisting somebody who's a victim of a hate crime and you're looking for resources in Sacramento County, you can click on that and it will have a drop-down menu like this with the different organizations that can provide assistance. Some of these organizations are local, some of them are regional, some of them are statewide, and some of them are national. And once you, I don't have a screenshot of, for instance, the Brave Society, but if you do click on the Brave Society, it'll provide you with their address, their phone number, the services that they provide, and other contact information, email, fax, etc. And you can just click on a link and it'll directly take you to their site, which is very helpful for service providers and victims. We have a lot of callers are looking for legal representation or places where they can get additional legal information about their rights. For instance, if they're in a landlord-tenant issue, they can click on that in whatever county they're in and they'll get the same type of information. So that's been very helpful, and we're hoping to implement an app in the next few months where all this information will be stored to. So this is an example of some of our publications that are available. All our publications are available in English and in Spanish, and they're all for free. So, and you can order them on our website or by calling the 1-800-VICTIMS line. And we choose our publications. Sorry, this is the one online. This is the one that's in print. The way that we choose topics for our publications is by looking at the calls that we get and looking at the topics that keep coming up over and over and over again, because that tells us that there's a gap in information. to victims. Victims are a little bit confused about this area. So we provide this publication, and a lot of victims do like that, having something in their hand that they can look at, having written material and not something online that they can refer to. So we are soon going to be releasing 2 new publications, one on restitution and one on a guide to the criminal justice system, because we found that a lot of victims are confused about the different stages in the criminal justice process. You have an arraignment, you have a bail hearing, you have sentencing, and they don't understand what those things are and how they can enforce the rights in each stage of the process. And that's one of the reasons that we're going to be releasing those publications. We also have publications on domestic violence, elder abuse, victims with disabilities, cyberbullying, because that's something that we've seen come up once again over and over again as a hot topic. A lot of victims are getting victimized online. And it's relatively new. A lot of people aren't familiar with it, and we're there to inform the public about the rights and resources in those areas. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the demographics of the Victims of Crime Resource Center callers. Like I said, we accept all calls. We have no economic qualifications, so you don't have to have a certain income level to call us or be below a certain income level to call us. You don't have to be a victim of a specific crime to call us. We help all callers. About 89% of our callers are English speaking, and about 10% are Spanish speaking. When we've really done a lot of outreach to the Spanish speaking community through presentations. We go to the food bank here in Sacramento twice a month and present in Spanish. And we also have gone to the Mexican consulate at least 2 to 3 times a month and presented on victims' rights and other issues in Spanish. And like I said, we try to incorporate the newsletter article in Spanish as well. So we've seen the callers go, Spanish callers go up, and we've also seen callers with, talking other languages, and we're able to assist them through the language line. 33% of our callers are male and 66% are female. And the age category, majority of our callers are adults, but we do get some minors and some seniors calling us as well. And we're seeing those numbers kind of go up as the years have progressed. The crime type, like I said, we help victims of all crimes. So you can see assault and battery, domestic violence are the top 2 percentages. Did not discuss. A lot of callers do not want to talk about the crime. They do not want to share that information, and we definitely do not want to push them or make them uncomfortable. And as I said, they provide as much or as little as they want. So 15% of our callers just do not tell us what crime type they were involved in. We've seen 4% elder abuse, a lot of fraud, especially internet fraud, harassment, etc. So referrals that we provide, 60% of our callers get referred to the California Victim Compensation Program. So somebody from your office will be speaking to them. And that's because a lot of victims need financial assistance. And that's why they reach out to victims organizations. And we know you guys have eligibility requirements. Only certain crimes are qualifying crimes. And we explain that to them, but we let them know, you know what, give them a call because they do have exceptions. And that's a decision that CalVCP folks are able to make. So give them a call and they will be able to let you know if they can assist you or not. Victim Witness Assistance Center, 80% of our callers are not aware of the Victim Witness Assistance Center and that they're entitled to an advocate. So 80% of our callers are referred out to the Victim Witness Assistance Center. And the 20% that aren't, a lot of them, their cases are not going through the criminal justice process. Anytime there's a case going through the criminal justice process, we always inform them about Marssys Law and also the Victim Witness Assistance Center, because it's essential to have that advocate as a support person for the victim and to keep the victim informed. And they do a wonderful job with that. 25% of our callers get referred to legal assistance. They're looking for legal representation. They're looking for self-help centers or workshops that can assist them with custody, divorce if it's domestic violence situation, etc. Bar associations are also a great resource for victims who are looking for attorneys, and each county does have one. Community resources, we get a lot of callers looking for assistance with food and shelter, looking for therapy referrals, looking for domestic violence shelters. So that's 30% of our referrals go to those types of community resources. And we also have 20% of our callers get referred to other governmental referrals, such as adult protective services, if it's an elder abuse situation, child protective services, child abuse situation, the Federal Trade Commission, financial fraud, identity theft, etc. So those are all great resources, and a lot of victims, unfortunately, aren't aware of those things, and that's why we refer them to those resources. So assistance to service providers such as yourself, how can the Victims of Crime Resource Center provide assistance and support to CalVCP staff? And we do that in several ways. Like I said, we do offer the free presentations on specific topics and victim-related topics, and all of our presentations are tailored to the organization that we're presenting to. We also have the free brochures, and I know that a lot of domestic violence shelters, for instance, across California, will provide victims with brochures to give them information about legal rights, about community resources, etc. So they're able to order our brochures and include them in that packet that they provide to victims. And I know some victim witness assistance centers also have our brochures, and they provide them to victims. And I'm happy to provide our brochures to any of CalVCP staff if needed. We also help service providers by providing them with assistance in understanding victims' rights. And also, if you have a question about the victim's role at any stage during the criminal justice process, give us a call and we're happy to provide you with that information. And one of the main things that we do to help service providers is provide free legal research. So if you have a legal question about any victim's rights topic, we're happy to do the research for you and provide you with a legal memo that looks something like this. We've received calls from victim witness advocates, domestic violence shelter advocates, CDCR employees that work with victims, and a lot of these questions can be answered informally over the phone if it's a pretty straightforward question, or formally if it's a little more in depth and needs a little bit more research on our end. It's free of charge. All our services are free of charge since we are government funded. And these questions are researched and answered by one of my law clerks or graduates. And it usually takes us between 1 to 14 business days to respond to the caller, just depending on the issue, once again, and the complexity of the question. And here's an example of some of the questions that we've received over the years. We got a question from a victim witness advocate who was working with a victim who had a restitution order, but it was for a juvenile case, and they wanted to know if that restitution order expires after 10 years. We also get a lot of questions about violations of Marssys Law and what victims can do if there is a violation. The specific case that is discussed right here is a victim who wasn't informed of a plea deal or sentencing date, and therefore wasn't allowed to participate by sharing the victim impact statement. So everything was done, and the victim was trying to get his or her voice heard in the process. They wanted to share that victim impact statement, and the question was posed to us, what can the victim do? They wanted to be heard. We also get very broad questions like, are there any statistics about how often domestic violence restraining orders are violated? And that was from a domestic violence shelter in one of the California counties. And also we get questions from attorneys, pro bono attorneys working with victims about specific procedural issues. And we're happy to help with that as well. So I'm gonna shift gears a little bit now and talk about victims' rights in California. All of you know that criminal defendants have rights in the criminal justice system, right? Everybody is aware of it. I've presented to young kids who can recite the Miranda rights to me. So everybody's aware of that, but not a lot of people are aware that victims have right in the process. When I was in law school, I took criminal law. I was not taught that victims had rights in the criminal justice process, just because there's a lot of information that we cover in law school, and this isn't one of the topics, unfortunately, that's covered. And it is fairly new. In California, victims are entitled to constitutional rights. It's called Marsys Law. And victims have 17 enumerated rights in the California Constitution. And victims also have rights in the federal law, in the federal Constitution. So that's huge, and that's very powerful to give victims that information, to arm them with that information. It's very empowering to know that you have rights and to understand how you can get those rights enforced. So we're gonna switch over and watch a quick video on Marsys Law, just a brief background. Hang with me 1 second so I can get it going.
Do you know what it's like to lose someone you love? Now, imagine someone you love being brutally murdered. Your son, your daughter.
The neighbors that went in found my son, Neil, who was 27, lying at the top of the stairs, so covered in blood that they couldn't tell what his ethnicity was.
It took 5 hours for her to die. She bled to death on the operating table.
He met her with a shotgun and blew her head off.
Meet the other victims of violence, the families of the murder victims. What sets these people and tens of thousands like them apart is they were twice victimized by murder and by the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system that failed to recognize that these people had any right to be involved in the process. The system that ignored them, forgot them, and often intentionally excluded them, stripping them of their rights and dignity. When Lee Bertha Pickett Allen's 17-year-old son was killed, she got the message loud and clear. She was not very important.
They had held a preliminary hearing, but they didn't tell us because they didn't think that we were interested enough, that we were grieving and we would not be interested in coming to a preliminary hearing.
But that wasn't the end of the horror. Imagine running into your daughter's killer out in public. It happened to Marsy's mother.
They arrested him and he was in jail. So we had the funeral, and a week later, we went to the cemetery to put flowers on the grave, and we were coming back, and my husband Bob said, I'm going to stop in front of the market, just run out and get a loaf of bread. So just as I got out to get a loaf of bread, the murderer was coming out of the market.
They had no idea the killer was out on bail, but back then, that was simply standard operating procedure. Slowly, victims and their families started reaching out to one another and started asking questions. Why don't we have a constitutional right to be notified about hearings? Why don't we have the right to speak up and be heard in the criminal justice system? Why is it that defendants seem to have all the rights?
I've seen firsthand the terrible ordeal that victims' families are forced to go through. How there's no notification if the accused killer gets out on bail. And if there is a conviction, there are those endless parole hearings to attend. My mother suffered a heart attack from the stress of one of those hearings. I knew that something had to be done.
Despite strong opposition from special interests and a well-financed negative media campaign, California voters passed Marsys Law on November 4th, 2008, and it went into effect the next day. Marsys Law provides crime victims with many new rights, including these highlights. Marsys Law grants victims the right to justice and due process. It also gives victims the right to be informed and to participate at critical stages. Marsys Law also provides victims' families with the right to be heard. So when they attend, say, a bail hearing, they now have a voice in court and may persuade a judge to deny bail. For example, when the victim's safety is threatened, Marsys Law doesn't just help victims of crime. It's also a tool for the men and women in the state's law enforcement agencies who have dedicated their lives to fighting crime. Marsys Law is the strongest victims' bill of rights in any state in the nation. Its passage means that, for the first time, victims in California have meaningful and enforceable rights. Marsys Law gives victims a meaningful opportunity to participate in parole proceedings, and in that way, they set their safety and the safety of the general public as the critical standard before any release decisions are made. And now, victims' families are no longer invisible, no longer forgotten, the way LaWanda Hawkins once was.
The Marsys Law changed that. It made you give the voice. It made your child come to life. It gave victims rights. It's not like bringing our kids back to life, but it made our children not die in vain.
Okay, so Marsys Law was passed in 2008, so it's still fairly new, in terms of laws and how long it takes for people to understand the laws and be informed. A lot of victims aren't aware of Marsys Law. We actually tracked this through the 1-800 line, and only about 20% of the callers have even heard of the word Marsys Law or Marsy. And a lot of them say, you know, yeah, I was provided with a pamphlet that had the text of the law, but I don't understand what it means. So they have constitutional rights, 17 enumerated rights, but not knowing about them, not knowing how to enforce them makes it useless, really. So it's our duty to let victims know that they do have these rights. And I know that you guys have been doing this trauma-informed care series to help you understand the best way to deal with victims. And imagine arming them once again with this information, letting them know, you know, are you familiar with your Marssys Law rights? Do you know how to go by enforcing them? Do you understand them? Do you want more information? And directing them to the resources that can provide them with that information. It's critical. So who is a victim under Marssys Law? A lot of people think that it's just the direct victim, but that's not actually the case. So it's not the person that was assaulted only that's a victim of the crime, but it's also the derivative victims. That person's spouse, parents, children, siblings, legal guardians. So it's a very expansive definition. This definition of a crime victim is the most progressive in the entire United States. And Marssys Law is the most progressive victims' rights bill in the entire United States. California is leading the way. So this is huge for crime victims. And every single one of the derivative victims has the same rights that that direct victim has. And that's critical to know as well. I know the video touched on some of the rights, but I'm going to go over a few of them. The victim has the right to be treated with fairness and respect. The victim has the right to be protected from the criminal defendant or anybody acting on his behalf. The victim has the right to have his or her safety considered when the judge is determining bail or considering parole. The victim has the right to a speedy process, just like a criminal defendant does. The victim has the right to prevent disclosure of confidential information, and this is huge for victims, especially sexual assault victims, domestic violence victims, and other victims who get bombarded with subpoenas from the defense attorney, subpoenas of therapy records, phone records, school records, etc. Because of Marssys Law, the victim has the right to motion the court to quash those subpoenas and not have that information be available to the defense. The victim has the right to also refuse any requests for interviews made by the defense attorney, and the victim has the right to request the prompt return of property. If any property was seized for evidence, the victim has the right to get that back as soon as it's no longer needed. The victim has the right to restitution, as I know all of you are aware of, but a big part of that right is helping victims after the fact. How do they collect this restitution? There's a huge gap in knowledge on how to do that. So they do have the right, but a lot of times they feel like it's a meaningless right because it's a paper that says they're owed this much money and they have no idea how to collect it, and they can collect it civilly. So that's also good to know and good to inform victims of. The victim has also other rights under Marssys Law, but these rights have to be requested. And because it's fairly new, victims don't know how to request these rights. And what we recommend is that they provide the victim witness advocate and the prosecutor with a written notice that they want to enforce these rights that need to be requested. And those rights include the right to confer with prosecutor and to get notice of the defendant's arrest, the charges against the defendant, and also extradition. And when I say they have the right to confer with a prosecutor, I'm not saying that the victim has the right to go and say, this is what needs to be done and this is what's going to be done. That's not the case because the prosecutor is the one that's trying the case. The victim can voice their opinion and talk to the prosecutor about what they want to see happen to the case, but in the end, it is up to the prosecutor. But just being able to voice their opinion and share how they feel and what they feel should happen, whether or not they feel a plea agreement should happen, etc., is huge for a victim because they really feel like they're participating in the process and they're not sitting on the sidelines watching everything else happen. You know, they are the victims. This is their case. This is how they're supposed to get justice, and they need to be involved, and this provides them with that opportunity. The victim also has to request the right to be notified of any pretrial public proceeding and any and notice of and presence at all public proceedings. They have to request that as well. They also have the right to speak at any hearing, but that needs to be requested as well. So the victim can go up to the judge directly and talk to the judge about how he or she feels, how he or she thinks this case should proceed, etc. And the victim also has the right to get a copy of the pre-sentence report when it's available to the defendant. So I'm gonna start talking now about other organizations that provide assistance to victims. And I know most people in this room are familiar with the Victim Witness Assistance Center. There's one located in each county. And these centers are intended to help victims with many things that have happened as a result of the crime, and also basically hold their hand through the criminal justice process, provide them the information, provide them with the notifications. So they're the go-between between the victim and the prosecutor. Some of the services for the Victim Witness Assistance Centers are mandatory and others are optional. And these are some of the mandatory services. Orientation, to the criminal justice system. Like I said before, a lot of victims are confused about the criminal justice system and the different processes involved in the system. And that's what the advocate is there for, to provide that orientation, to provide crisis intervention, any emergency assistance. So if the victim needs emergency shelter, etc., the advocate can help them locate those services. Provide information about case status and disposition. And this is huge for victims because, for instance, if you have a sentencing date and the victim needs to be informed so the victim can prepare the victim impact statement, the victim advocate is the person that would do that. They're also mandated to provide assistance with temporary restraining orders. They're there to be a court escort, to provide somebody there in court as a support person, and also to assist with CalVCP claims, as many of you are aware. And the rest of them are pretty straightforward. They provide some restitution collection, or at least direction to organizations that can assist. Some of the optional services, some centers provide, but unfortunately many don't. And it's very funding contingent. A lot of centers have limited funding, have limited number of staff, so they're not able to provide these optional services. But those who do provide, for instance, childcare. So if it's a domestic violence victim who has young children, they're there to provide. They can provide childcare on site while the victim is getting assistance with the advocate or working with the advocate on CalVCP forms. Other services that I'm going to talk about is the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation's Victim Services Unit, VINE, which is Victim Information Notification Every Day, Safe at Home program, and also the California Attorney General's Victim Services Unit. And I have the website and phone number for each of these, so you can go to their website or contact them directly if you have any additional questions. So the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation offers assistance for victims where the offender is sentenced to under CDCR, and they can help with collection of restitution. They can also inform the victim about the offender's status and any parole hearings, which is huge for victims, because once again, victims will get the opportunity to go to the parole hearing and speak directly to the parole hearing board, and let the parole board know how the victim would like the case to proceed, whether or not they feel like the defendant should be released. And there's their website and phone number, and all this information can also be retrieved on our website. VINE is huge for victims. It's a free service that's provided to victims or next of kin or other witnesses, and it provides 24-hour a day, 7 days a week information about offender status. The victims are notified by phone, by text, by email, and they can set this up on the website. It's available in English and Spanish. And it's huge because, for instance, if you have a victim of domestic violence or a victim of stalking and the offender is going to be released, they get a 90-day notification before the person's released. And that's huge. So the victim can get things in order, can, get to a secure place, or make sure that they put an alarm system, etc. So having that information is very powerful for victims and very important. The Safe at Home program is run by the Secretary of State's program here in California, and they protect victims of domestic violence, stalking, and sexual assault by providing them with a free PO box that the victim can receive mail. So if the victim's applying for a credit card or bills, you know, electric bills or whatever, they can use this PO box so that their real address is not out there and made available, and the offender will be able to find it. It is not an address confidentiality program, but it does provide this free PO box. And basically helping victims maintain their privacy, and they've helped more than 6,000 survivors since 1999. And there's the phone number to the Safe at Home program as well. And the last organization that I'm going to mention is the California Attorney General's Victim Services Unit, and they provide the Marssys Law card. They're the ones that print them and make them available. The Victim Services Unit has translated it into 17 different languages and also Braille, and it can be provided to your organization for free in print by calling the Victim Services Unit. They also notify victim of case updates that the Attorney General's office is handling, so criminal appeals and any death row cases. And the phone number is right there to the Victim Services Unit at the Attorney General's office, and that's their website. And you can reach us at 1-800-victims.org. There's my direct phone number and my email address. If you have any questions, if you'd like any assistance with legal research, we're there to provide you with assistance and provide you with support to help you better serve victims. So please feel free to order brochures or give us a call if you have any questions, or use our resource database to assist victims. Does anybody have any questions? I know I went through a lot of material pretty fast.
Do you still have a restitution clinic where you help people go to court and get restitution?
Okay, so the question was if we do the restitution clinic anymore. The clinic had to be stopped for a little bit, but we are in the process of restarting the clinic now. And we have assisted victims with domestic violence restraining orders, and we do assist victims with restitution. But we're just starting it back up again. It's been on pause for the past 2 years because of funding. But thank you for asking, and please refer victims. It's limited to Sacramento County residents, but please refer victims to us and we're able to assist them. I also wanted to let you know that we are having an event during the National Crime Victims' Rights Week at McGeorge, and it's on civil justice for victims of crime. And we are co-sponsoring the event with the National Crime Victim Center in Washington, D.C. So it's a free event, so please, I'll send a flyer to Mika, and please feel free to attend to get information about civil justice for victims, because it's huge and a lot of victims feel frustrated that the prosecutor is not charging a case and they want to understand if they have other remedies, and the civil system is definitely a route that they can take and that they should take. So please feel free to join us for that event. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, yeah.
For more constitutional changes,
Do
you assist with that? Because I know San Diego County has changed where the child molest offenders do not have to live within, I think it was, they had to live outside of the 2-mile radius.
Okay.
And it's changed in San Diego County, and they're talking about it going statewide.
Okay.
It's going to be really traumatic for victims, and I guess a lot of parents, because they can't live within 2 miles of schools and parks.
Sure. So the question is about San Diego County in specific. I guess they're changing the sex offender location. They have to be by law a certain distance away from schools because they are part of that registry as offenders. And I guess the county is thinking about changing that radius, shrinking it a little bit. So what kind of assistance we can provide? We can refer them to organizations that can provide that legislative advocacy, because that's the type of help that those victims would need, somebody to advocate for them in the legislature, let the legislative body know how such a change would impact victims. And I know there are a lot of statistics and other studies that have been done across the country with even Marssy's Law. You know, you saw the impact that seeing the offender had on Marsy's mom and how much she suffered because of that. So for a sex offender, it's even much more highlighted and dangerous because of the school, the proximity to the school. So give us a call and we're happy to direct you to victim services that provide legislative advocacy, and they're the ones that would be able to provide that assistance. But excellent question, thank you. Anything else? No other questions? Well, please feel free to give us a call or call me directly. I'm happy to help, and thank you very much for coming today.
Thanks, everyone. So before you go, just make sure to fill out your evaluation. And I do also want to let you know that I'm going to be working with my team to create a page in the online manual defining what trauma-informed services means, what that means to CalVCP, and then posting up information from the last couple of trainings, the PowerPoints, and links to the videos. So if you miss it or if you want to re-review the PowerPoint, we're going to have one page dedicated to our trauma-informed workshop series. So more to come on that. Thanks, everyone.